MPV tells us the size of the platelets, the platelet crit, and the different platelet distribution width. The parameters which are provided by these analyzers, some are measured parameters we know, and some can be which are derived parameters, and they are formed into histograms for different elements of blood. What is a histogram? Basically, histogram is a graphic presentation of cells, and this produces, if you look at this, each cell has a different size, small, larger, more large, and then of course the largest cell. Each cell, when it passes through, all of us, I don't have to go into the detail of the functioning of a counter, I'm sure all of us know it, passes, and each cell causes one peak. It causes an impulse, and all these impulses are measured. Now, if you look at your microscopic slide, you see a thing like this. You know that there are microcytes, macrocytes, normal cells, and some differentiated cells. But what is happening to these when they pass through a counter? When they pass through a counter, each cell generates a different peak according to the size that it is from. And this is then by the computer of that analyzer is arranged in a different pattern to give you a data. Signals are analyzed and it is formed and is measured in femtoliters to give you the correct size of that particular population of cells. It averages it out. Now, what happens to RBCs and platelets on a cell analyzer? Platelets, as we know, are smaller. They're 25 to 75 femtoliters. RBCs are 200 to 250. Majority of them are peaked at this level. So you know that about 100, 150 femtoliters are the RBCs. RBC histogram, when we see, it is shown from 50 to 100, 150 comes down to 200. That means the main RBC population is in this region, and that is what it is trying to tell us. The histogram, the RDW can be shown either as a CV, percentage of coefficient of variation, or can be due to femtoliters. You can measure it as standard SD. This gives us the measure of anisocytosis. Now let's look at some of the histograms. You have your smears with you, you have everything with you, you need little confirmation. So when you look at the histogram, you know that your WBC lymphocytes are the smallest cells. Then monocytes, large lymphocytes, eosinophils, and then the neutrophils are here. Similarly, RBC histogram, you see a peak which is there, and then it falls down. And this usually starts at 50 femtoliters, ends at about 150 femtoliters. These are the normal histograms for RBC. Microcytosis, when you have to pick up, please look at your histogram first. Don't look at the top of the parameters. Look at this. When you look at this, you realize that your histogram is shifted to the left. That means smaller cells are there. More population of small cells is there in your particular sample. You have confirmed your smear is showing you RBC microcytosis, and here MCH, which is measured on an average out of all this, is 59.2, and you know that the MCV is low, so you confirm microcytosis. And that is how the RBC graph left shift is giving you the information. Macrocytosis, on the other hand, see the graph becoming broad and opened out. It has gone up to almost 100 femtoliters and beyond, and it is shifted to the right. This is the measure of macrocytosis on a histogram. Dimorphic population sometimes gives you a peak, dual peak. Two peaks can be there, or it may be a little nick and then it goes up again. So that is the dimorphic population of cells. In thalassemias, I am talking of thal traits only, carriers. When I mentioned on the PBS also, differentiating between iron deficiency and thal traits only, not thal major. Please remember. This is also thalassemia trait. You have high RBC count, low MCV, and RDW is almost normal or little higher, because in India we have a lot of combinations of iron deficiency associated with thalassemia trait. So you may have little RDW higher. Certain formulas have been given, but the basic thing is to look at your 3 parameters, and you will recognize that there is anemia 10 grams, high RBC count for 10 grams 6.1 is definitely high. You start suspecting thalassemia trait. Then there is anisocytosis, which is seen as this broad base, as I told you earlier also, and it shows you as RDW high. That means the cell population is varying right from micro to macro to very large cells to normal cells. That is anisocytosis. Please remember, in WBC histograms, you may see a peak right starting very high up, high take off at the y-axis, and these are usually the RBCs which are parasitized, larger, and they start at a higher level. Then your lymphocytes come, then your monocytes and the neutrophils come, and that little peak should warn you that there is some gadbad here. Can be very nucleated RBCs sometimes can be seen, but parasites can be picked up if you are very carefully looking at your histograms. Now, in the different size of WBCs, coming to the WBC histograms, you have lymphocytes which are smallest. Then the mid-size population is all 3 together. That means monocytes, eosinophils and basophils all together. And then comes the larger cells. These are the neutrophils. A normal WBC histogram will look like this. Lymphocyte peak with a little flat monocyte and mid population, and then the neutrophils are seen in this right side. Eosinophilia is usually seen as a mid population increase. If you see this mid population increase, it is showing you eosinophils in this population. Neutrophil leukocytosis, granulocytosis. Can you see the lymphocyte population? The peak has gone down, and you see a very large, broad-based neutrophil leukocytosis, 14,600 with 88% neutrophils. Shift is to the right of a histogram. Chronic myeloid leukemia, again you see no lympho, nothing. The whole thing is mid populations. You have more of monos, myelocytes, promyelocytes, neutrophils, all large cells, and the whole histogram has become like a mound of flat mound. There are no peaks in this now, and this is a very typical single peak monocyte region. This is very typical of chronic myeloid leukemia. Chronic lymphocytic leukemia, single peak in the lymphocyte region because they are all small, nice, round, mature cells, and you have count which is high, and mainly the differential is not given, but from here you can make out that the whole population is only of small lymphocytes. Pancytopenia, of course, you can see that it has become small, little, the platelets are very small, and there is a left shift in the platelets also. This is pancytopenia, can be due to aplastic anemia. Now, if you compare 2 cases of 10 grams HB, both have 10 grams HB, here 4.6 RBC, here 6.2 RBC. RDW almost normal, RDW high. This is a case of iron deficiency, this is a case of thalassemia trait. So, when you are correlating your microcytosis, please look at the parameters and your values which have been given by your counter. We all know this graph very well, that MCV normal RDW, I don't have to go through it, I think everybody knows about it. Limitations are there in terms of morphology, and the counters may not count polychromatophilus fragment, and all these things can be missed in the counters, but that is where your expertise comes on the peripheral smear. All this is there on your smear. So with the smear and your printouts of your counters, you can straight away interpret anything in hematology. Thus, automation is an able assistant to an intelligent master. You must know your machine, know the limitations of a machine. Many times there are platelet clumping in the EDTA samples. You will get platelet count of 2,000, 10,000, and yet on the smear you see bharpur platelets, 3 lakhs, 4 lakhs platelets. You say no, ये counter ही खराब है. Counter खराब नहीं है. Your platelets have clumped in EDTA. It is known to have EDTA clumping in many cases. It's not specific. We are still trying to find out what is the reason. But for these cases, you can try putting these samples, especially patients on chemotherapy. Collect the sample in citrate. You may be able to get a true count. Or do the citrate manual count. Understood? So these are some limitations of the counters, of the sample collections. So you must understand what you are using. Don't just use like these people who have got a computer and they don't know what a mouse is. And they don't know how to use it. So we do not believe that you can do today's job with yesterday's methods and be in business tomorrow. You have to change with times. And please look at the latest methods. Thank you so much. Now, questions? Time for questions? Yeah.
If you have any questions, is there time for?
What is the significance of neonatal eosinophilia?
Neonatal eosinophilia.
Clinical correlation.
Normal neonates can have eosinophils up to 10%, which is normal for them. But we have seen in patients of ABO incompatibility, autoimmune hemolytic anemias, they have more eosinophils than normal. Yeah. Yes, please.
The interpretation of the histograms.
Yes.
Is it valid if the sample is run fresh on the counter, or how does it change?
It changes a little, but we all know that the sample has to be run within the first 6 hours. More than that, all your parameters will change. Especially your MCVs will not be correct. So don't do that. We have to stick to the timing of that. Any counter, you have to stick to the timing.